Inside a high-rise tech office in Austin, Texas, a 32-year-old founder silently canceled his afternoon VC pitch and turned off his company's Slack. In the middle of the blistering midday heat, he cleared his desk and walked out of the building without sending a single email to his 14-person team. No 2-week notice, no public pivot plan. Yet, years later, that same founder didn't just survive his abrupt exit. He built a quiet operation that lasted through 2 brutal market crashes. In America, where 44% of workers report severe burnout, hustle harder is the default script we blindly follow. We are taught to aggressively chase our goals until we break. But Stoicism offers a radical departure from your endless LinkedIn doom scrolling and exhausting midnight planning sessions. It is absolutely not another feel-good productivity hack. It is a completely different internal operating system, one that makes real opportunity move toward you instead of you running after it. These are 7 profound shifts that rewire how you relate to uncertainty, emotion, and action. In 2008, the American economy violently crashed, erasing over $8 trillion in household wealth overnight. More than 170,000 small businesses quietly closed their doors forever. It was a brutal, terrifying year. Hustling harder does not work when the floor falls out from under you. Positive thinking feels like a cruel joke. If you ask the people who lost their homes in Florida or their life savings in Ohio during that collapse, they will tell you a very different story. You do not need a new morning routine to optimize your day. You need a way to survive the afternoon without completely falling apart. Right now, young executives in Silicon Valley treat Stoicism like a cheap productivity hack. We print ancient quotes on expensive coffee mugs. We use these words to squeeze a few more hours of work out of an exhausted brain.
But that is not why this philosophy was created. It was not forged in air-conditioned boardrooms to help people win. It was forged in absolute, devastating loss. Consider Zeno of Citium, a wealthy merchant living in the 3rd century BC. One afternoon, Zeno was sailing across the Mediterranean Sea with a ship carrying purple dye, the most valuable cargo of his time. A massive storm hit, and the ship sank. He survived, but his entire fortune rested at the bottom of the ocean. He washed up in Athens with literally nothing but the wet clothes on his back. He did not sit down to write a strategy for getting his money back. He realized his internal state was the only property the ocean could not swallow. He later said, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." That is the origin of this entire way of thinking. It was never about getting more. It was about becoming unbreakable when everything is taken away. Epictetus did not teach his students how to climb the social ladder. He was born a slave in the Roman Empire. He lived his entire life with a leg permanently crippled by a cruel master. Every single day, he woke up as someone else's property. He had 0 rights, 0 wealth, and 0 control over his physical location. Yet, he built a mind so unshakable that even Roman emperors eventually sought his advice. Marcus Aurelius did not write his private journals to become a better leader. He was writing them in a freezing military tent on the Germanic border in the year 170 AD. His empire was being decimated by the Antonine Plague. He was watching his people die. He was burying his friends. These men were not trying to hack their way to a promotion in Rome. They were trying to endure hell without losing their humanity. And this changes exactly how you need to use their words today.
If you are a 30-something manager in Chicago, looking at a layoff notice from a company where you just gave 5 years of your life, the standard advice will only hurt you. Your peers are posting their shiny new jobs on LinkedIn. The world tells you to panic. It tells you to run faster. It tells you that your worth is tied to your recovery speed. When a crisis hits the American job market, the instinct is to immediately apply for 50 new roles. Stop running. When everything around you collapses, the goal is not to immediately build a new empire. The goal is to build a floor beneath your mind. You have to stabilize before you can move. Look at the founders of Airbnb in the winter of 2008. They were living in San Francisco, drowning in tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt. Investors on Sand Hill Road were rejecting them daily. The broader financial market was bleeding. Their original idea was completely failing. They did not buy into the delusion that a magical investor would save them. Instead, they bought cardboard. They glued together novelty cereal boxes called Obama-O's to sell for $40 each. They were literally selling breakfast cereal to keep their website running. They accepted the humiliation. They accepted the failure of their original plan. They focused purely on the immediate, tangible action in front of them without worrying about the massive debt waiting tomorrow. You stop sending those panicked emails at 2 a.m. That is what it actually looks like to stop chasing and start standing firm. When you remove the desperation to win right now, you stop making chaotic decisions. You stop taking terrible deals just to feel a sense of motion. Just like Zeno standing on the beach in Athens, something very strange happens when you finally plant your feet. The dust settles. The desperation clears. You start seeing the quiet opportunities that your panic was blinding you to.
Success in a volatile economy does not move toward desperate people. You do not pull it toward you by wanting it more than the next person. You pull it toward you by being the only person in the room who is no longer terrified of losing. Look at your desk right now. Look at the endless open tabs on your computer monitor. You probably have 5 different notebooks filled with brilliant business ideas that you have not touched in months. You call it deep research. You call it getting ready for the big launch. But a recent Gallup poll found that 28% of American workers are chronically burned out. A massive portion of that daily exhaustion comes directly from the heavy mental weight of planning things you never actually execute. You sit in your chair at the end of the day, completely drained, and yet nothing real has been built. You feel a sharp guilt in your chest. You tell yourself you are just a chronic procrastinator. You think you simply lack the discipline to succeed. That is a lie you have accepted. You are not lazy. You are biologically trapped by your own intelligence. Dr. Antonio Damasio, a prominent neuroscientist, spent decades mapping exactly how our human minds process choices and emotions. He discovered something deeply terrifying about how we are physically wired. Your brain cannot tell the difference between careful preparation and fearful avoidance. They light up the exact same physical regions in your head. They trigger the identical somatic markers in your nervous system. When you spend 6 straight hours color-coding a complex project spreadsheet, your body registers that as real forward motion. Your brain releases chemical rewards. You feel intensely productive. But you are secretly hiding. You are choosing the safe comfort of planning over the brutal, unpredictable exposure of doing. This is exactly why the smartest people you know are often the ones who move the slowest. Walk into any expensive coffee shop in Silicon Valley this morning. You will see hundreds of highly paid tech workers agonizing over the perfect logo design for a startup that has absolutely 0 customers. They consume endless audiobooks about morning routines. They buy another $1,000 online course to master a new marketing skill. They tell their families they are just waiting for the perfect economic conditions to finally launch. That is not preparation. That is a highly sophisticated form of running away. Your high intelligence is simply helping you build a much more convincing excuse. The smarter you are,
the better you are at lying to yourself about why you are standing still. If you have ever spent a whole weekend researching a bold move without taking one single real step, comment, "I relate" below. This is a safe space, and I read every single one. I promise you are not alone in this trap. So how do you break out of a loop that your own body is creating? You cannot outthink biology. You cannot read another self-help book to fix an issue that was created by reading too much in the first place. You have to force a sudden physical collision with reality. Your brain needs undeniable proof that you are moving. Let me tell you about a founder named Alex in Chicago. He spent 2 exhausting years mapping out a massive consulting business on giant whiteboards in his apartment. He had 0 clients. He was completely paralyzed. One Tuesday afternoon, he grabbed a black marker, wrote down one single coaching offer on a cheap piece of paper, took a photo with his phone, and posted it online. It was ugly. It was completely unprofessional. But that tiny 45-second action completely shattered his brain's avoidance cycle. It forced him out of the imaginary future and into the messy present. You do not need more information. You are drowning in information. What you need is friction. You need to do something poorly today.
Write the terrible first draft. Send the embarrassing email. Launch the broken web page. Stop waiting for the anxiety to leave before you take the leap. The anxiety only leaves after you jump. Your mind will only stop protecting you when it sees that you survived the exposure. Action is the only language your nervous system actually respects. We are constantly sold a lie about what strength looks like. You hear it in every corporate training seminar in America. You are told that to reach the top, you must become a machine. You are supposed to suppress your fear. This is a dangerous misunderstanding of human nature. In the 3rd century BC, a Greek philosopher named Chrysippus completely destroyed this idea. He was the intellectual powerhouse who organized early Stoicism, and he absolutely did not teach his students to become unfeeling stone walls. He understood something fundamental that modern hustle culture gets entirely wrong. Chrysippus realized that emotions are not your enemy. The problem is the specific lie that created the feeling. He divided human emotions into 2 very strict categories in his early writings. He called the first group pathe. These are the violent, destructive emotions born from false judgments. He called the second group eupathei. These are healthy, powerful emotions born from truth and clear understanding. You do not need to stop feeling. You just need to check where your feelings come from. Look at how we operate in the American workplace right now. A recent mental health report found that nearly 65% of senior U.S. executives suffer from crippling daily anxiety. They lay awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, terrified of missing their quarterly revenue targets. They sit in sterile conference rooms, sweating through their expensive suits, obsessing over what the board of directors thinks of them. According to ancient Stoics, all of that exhaustion is pure pathe. It is a toxic, burning reaction built on a massive delusion. That delusion is the belief that you can dictate reality. You cannot control the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. You cannot control your manager's unpredictable mood. You cannot force a client in London to sign a contract. When you tie your emotional stability to things you do not own, your nervous system violently rebels. It generates absolute panic. That panic pushes you to send passive-aggressive emails at midnight. You're acting out of pure desperation. This is why burnout clinics in California are currently overflowing. Desperation is loud, chaotic, and incredibly weak. Success actively runs away from desperate people. Now, look at the alternative.
What does a healthy, productive emotion actually look like? Chrysippus had an answer. It looks like a quiet, intense dedication to the single task right in front of you. It is the deep satisfaction of doing difficult work well, regardless of who claps for it. That is eupatheiai. It is an emotion rooted firmly in reality. You control your effort. You control your honesty. When you focus solely on your own actions, the midnight panic vanishes. This is exactly how you turn a massive, failing operation around. Look at Satya Nadella when he took over as CEO of Microsoft in 2014. At that time, the company was a notoriously toxic battlefield. Tech journalists famously described it as a place where different departments constantly sabotaged each other. Employees were paralyzed by the fear of looking stupid in front of aggressive managers. The entire corporate culture was drowning in pathé. Everyone was terrified of losing their status. Nadella did not yell louder to fix it. He did not demand more aggressive sales quotas for the upcoming quarter. Instead, he forced his leadership team to read a book called Nonviolent Communication. He shifted their daily target toward pure curiosity and internal learning. He changed the fundamental belief from, "We must look like the smartest people in the room," to, "We must learn faster than anyone else." When that foundational belief changed, the daily panic among his engineers dropped. They stopped hiding their mistakes. They started actually building better software. Microsoft's market value skyrocketed by over $1 trillion under his quiet, steady leadership. He did not tell his people to stop caring. He changed exactly what they cared about. This is the exact internal change you must make right now. The next time your chest tightens before a major board meeting, do not try to force the anxiety down. Pause. Think back to Chrysippus. Ask yourself exactly what you are afraid of losing. Are you trying to control their reaction? If it is something you never truly owned in the first place, let the fear die. You do not need to be a cold, emotionless statue to survive the modern American economy. You just need to care deeply about the right things. You sit in a performance review and hear one piece of mild criticism. For the next 3 days, that single comment plays on a constant loop in your head. You try desperately to force yourself to be completely indifferent to the feedback. A landmark 2002 study from the University of Michigan proves you are being completely unfair to yourself by doing this. Researchers closely examined how different groups of people physically handle social rejection. They found that your ability to brush off harsh criticism has almost nothing to do with your current mental toughness. It is deeply tied to the specific social environment you grew up in. Sociologist Randall Collins spent years observing this and gave this transfer of confidence a specific name: emotional energy. If you grew up in a highly stable home, you received a steady deposit of this energy every single day. You learned very early on that a small mistake would not destroy your life. But current economic data shows that nearly 70% of Americans born in the bottom half of the income distribution never make it to the top tiers of wealth. If you spent your childhood watching your parents agonize over a sudden $300 medical bill, your brain learned a very different lesson. You learned that one wrong move carries devastating, immediate consequences. You were explicitly trained to care intensely about what authority figures think. This creates a massive, unspoken divide in places like New York City finance firms today. Put two 25-year-old employees in the exact same high-pressure meeting. The first employee grew up taking expensive ski trips and attending elite private schools. When a senior partner aggressively rejects his pitch, he easily shrugs it off. He has a massive, lifetime reserve of emotional energy to fall back on. He does not take the rejection personally. The second employee is a first-generation college graduate from a small, working-class manufacturing town in the Midwest. When her pitch gets rejected, her nervous system goes into full physical survival mode. Her body feels like she is losing her entire fragile place in the corporate world. She is incredible at enduring massive amounts of stress and suffering in silence, but she is absolutely terrible at simply letting things go. The people who spent 20 years learning how to survive pain are often the worst at pulling success toward them. You spend so much time violently bracing for a disaster that you never actually relax enough to spot a real opportunity. You cannot just read a translated Roman quote and expect your nervous system to magically forget a lifetime of instability. You have to actively acknowledge your actual starting line. You must stop comparing your internal panic to the calm exterior of a coworker who grew up with an absolute financial safety net.
Acknowledging this difference is the only way to stop the relentless self-blame. Let me ask you directly right now before we move on. Have you ever felt completely exhausted just trying to look as confident and unbothered as the people around you? Tell me below in the comments, because we have to start talking honestly about the invisible history we carry into these American boardrooms. There's a highly dangerous idea spreading through the American self-help industry right now. Two completely different groups of people look at the modern economy and say the exact same sentence. They both fold their arms and say, "I am no longer chasing success." Group 1 says this because they are completely exhausted. They sit on their couches in Los Angeles, reading quotes on Instagram, and wait for money to magically appear. They disguise their pure laziness as spiritual wisdom. Group 2 says the exact same sentence, but they do something entirely different. Take Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. In the early days of his company in California, he completely refused to aggressively chase quarterly profits like every other CEO on Wall Street. He famously told his employees they could literally leave the office to go surfing when the ocean waves were good. He was not being passive. He was not just waiting for the universe to reward his good vibes. He was exercising a very specific Greek idea called prohairesis. This translates to your deliberate, intentional choice. You stop worrying about the massive, uncontrollable outcome. Instead, you obsess over the tiny, physical action right in front of your hands. Chouinard spent his days in a small tin shed in Burbank. He relentlessly hammered steel by hand to improve the physical quality of a single climbing piton. He did not chase market share. He built an undeniably excellent piece of climbing gear. Opportunity eventually flooded toward him because he created physical evidence of his worth. There is a massive difference between standing still because you are hiding and standing still because you are perfectly grounded. Epictetus proved this 2,000 years ago. He did not learn this philosophy in a comfortable modern office. He lived his daily life as a slave in the Roman Empire. His physical body was literally bound by iron chains. He had zero ability to chase wealth, status, or even his own physical freedom. If anyone had a valid excuse to be completely passive, it was him. Yet, Epictetus did not just give up and wait to be rescued. He used his prohairesis. He focused entirely on the only territory he actually owned. He focused on his immediate thoughts and his daily choices. He built an unshakable mind while still wearing those physical chains. He taught some of the most powerful politicians in Rome without ever once begging them for a favor. He was not passive. He was incredibly active within his tiny, restricted circle of control. You see this clever inaction everywhere today. A 30-year-old developer in Seattle decides he is done with the corporate rat race. He says he is letting go of the outcome. But instead of writing a single line of code for his new app, he spends 4 weeks designing a beautiful logo. He buys 12 different domain names on GoDaddy.
He tells his friends he is waiting for the perfect moment to launch. That is not letting go. That is cowardice dressed up as enlightenment. When you finally drop the desperate need to chase, you must immediately replace it with focused, deliberate work. You cannot just leave an empty void in your day. Let's look at what happens when you actually apply this inside a modern business. Imagine you stop looking at your competitor's marketing strategy for exactly 6 months. Instead of panicking, you put all that nervous energy into calling your existing customers.
Business data shows that a quiet 6-month period of deep, unglamorous work almost always triggers explosive organic growth. You stop staring at the final revenue goal. You stare at the phone in your hand. You make the call. You write the code. You forge the steel, just like Chenard did in Burbank. You do the quiet work without demanding an immediate reward from the world. This is exactly how you pull opportunity toward you. Opportunity is entirely blind to your spiritual wishes. It only respects your physical actions. So I want you to stop asking yourself if you are chasing too hard. That is the wrong question. I want you to ask yourself a much harder question today. Did you take one deliberate action within your absolute control before 8 a.m. this morning? Did you do the boring work while nobody was watching? Comment below and tell me, what is one small, unglamorous action you took today that was entirely in your control? Type it out right now. Claim it. Because that small action is the only thing that actually builds your empire. Look around the American business landscape today. The failure rate is absolutely terrifying. Current economic data shows that nearly 90% of all startups in the United States completely collapse within their first few years. You are operating in a market that actively punishes emotional fragility. A recent Gallup survey revealed that severe employee burnout has become the standard baseline for the modern workforce. We are running faster, sleeping less, and still completely missing the target. You try to fix this by downloading another productivity app. You try to force yourself out of bed at 4 in the morning to read another success article on Forbes. But life keeps getting more chaotic, and you keep getting more exhausted. You feel this deep instability every single day. You open your phone on a Tuesday morning and read about another massive wave of tech layoffs.
You see artificial intelligence completely wiping out entire career paths overnight. If you are a freelance graphic designer or a mid-level software engineer, you are probably terrified. Your chest tightens when you think about your income 6 months from now. You try to outwork the anxiety by saying yes to 3 more projects you cannot actually handle. In places like San Francisco, talented workers are burning through 80-hour weeks out of pure survival panic. They are desperately trying to control a wave that is entirely too big for them. Hustling your way through this specific type of economic chaos will only destroy your health. You cannot simply outwork an advanced algorithm. You cannot physically control a sudden global market shift. You cannot force a Wall Street venture capital firm to write you a check. This is exactly why a 2,000-year-old way of thinking is dominating the most competitive rooms in the country right now. Look at the culture inside Silicon Valley today. The top executives are no longer passing around cheap time management books. They are deeply studying the private journals of a dead Roman emperor. Author Ryan Holiday brought this ancient approach directly into the boardrooms of the most powerful companies in the world. His work with the Daily Stoic is actively used by NFL sports teams, military generals, and billionaire founders to manage extreme, relentless pressure. They do not read these books to sound intellectual at dinner parties. They use this knowledge because mastering your internal reaction is the absolute ultimate competitive advantage in modern America. It is the only thing that separates the people who build lasting wealth from the people who burn out and vanish. When the market suddenly crashes, the anxious founder makes terrible, impulsive decisions. He immediately fires his best people. He slashes his prices. He ruins his own product because he is terrified of a temporary dip in the S&P 500.
The grounded founder does the exact opposite. He breathes. He looks at the brutal reality without flinching. He buys cheap assets while everyone else in his industry is screaming in panic, exactly like Warren Buffett has done for decades. This internal shift is absolutely not a spiritual luxury for the wealthy. It is a hard, practical requirement for your financial survival. If your mind collapses every time the economy shakes, you will never hold on to the success you actually managed to catch. Just look back at the people who thrive after every major American recession. The winners are rarely the smartest people in the room. They are simply the individuals who refuse to let external panic dictate their internal choices. They understand that a volatile gig economy will always try to break their focus. They expect the disruption, knowing that the average American worker will change jobs 12 times in their lifetime. They anticipate the struggle instead of hiding from it. You have to build the solid floor beneath you before you try to build a skyscraper. The American economy will always be volatile and unpredictable. There will always be a new disruptive technology like a sudden ChatGPT update threatening your job. There will always be a new urgent reason to stay awake at night, staring at the ceiling. But when you finally stop trying to control the wind, you can actually learn how to steer the ship. You pull massive opportunity toward you by becoming the calmest, most unshakable person in a highly frantic room. There is a dangerous illusion I need to shatter right now. Reading ancient philosophy will not magically fund your startup. Following the global pandemic in 2020, book sales for Stoic texts in the United States skyrocketed by over 40%. Millions of terrified people bought these books, hoping for a magical shield against economic pain. They wanted a rapid shortcut to wealth. But these words do not replace hard, undeniable skill. If you open a coffee shop in Chicago with terrible coffee, being perfectly calm about it will not save your business. You still have to do the grueling physical work. You still have to master your specific craft. You still need an undeniable product. If you are launching an e-commerce brand in New York City, philosophy will not fix a broken supply chain. It will not write a better marketing script for you. Stoicism is completely useless if you refuse to actually act. So why do we even read this? Why does someone like Tim Ferriss, an incredibly successful author and investor, read these exact texts every single morning? Because it gives you the one thing you desperately need to actually use your skills. It gives you the quiet space between an external shock and your physical reaction. This space is the absolute core of your survival. When a major client aggressively cancels a $100,000 contract, your untrained mind demands immediate panic. It demands a desperate, angry email. Philosophy simply buys you a 3-second pause. You take a breath. You do not hit send. In those 3 seconds of silence, you save your entire professional reputation. You stop destroying your own career just because you felt a sudden spike of fear. This exact shift is what happened back in Austin, Texas. Remember that 32-year-old founder from the very beginning of this video? The man who quietly walked out of his high-rise office and canceled his VC pitch? He did not just disappear into the desert to meditate. He went completely dark and built something real. He spent the next 18 months working in absolute silence.
He did not chase investors on LinkedIn. He did not post loud updates about his daily grind on social media. He focused entirely on the pure, unglamorous execution of his single software idea. He separated his emotions from the daily rejections. There were weeks when his bank account hit zero. He had to fire his own brother from the team. There were months when nobody returned his calls. But he did not let the external silence break his internal focus. He refused to let the market dictate his self-worth. Today, that exact company handles payroll for hundreds of small businesses across Texas. The massive venture capitalists he used to desperately chase are now actively calling his phone. He did not run after them. He stood completely still in that Austin office and forced the market to come to him. This is the ultimate truth about your ambition. Success is not your enemy. It is not actively hiding from you. It is simply exhausted by your frantic, desperate chasing. Just look at the millions of dollars wasted by frantic day traders on Wall Street. Success actively runs away from people who operate out of pure panic. But when you finally align your internal state, everything changes. The friction disappears. Inner alignment pulls opportunity toward you. It moves toward founders who can stand firm during a 50% market crash. It walks toward the people who do not need to scream to prove they are working. You have a choice to make before you close this video. You can go back to panicking about the American economy. You can keep refreshing your news feed every 20 minutes waiting for a disaster. Or you can take back your internal control starting right now. I want you to make a physical commitment today. Drop a comment below right now and tell me, one reaction I will choose today is, and fill in the blank. Type it out. Commit to it publicly. This channel is a community of builders, and I read every single comment. If this completely changed how you view your daily grind, hit the like button. Send this video to a friend working 80-hour weeks in tech right now. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a shift. Stop running. Plant your feet. Your best is coming.